recording. Okay. Some of the videos that are being shown when shown over Zoom don't look, perfect. Actually, in the process, I'm going to be converting a lot of this stuff and putting it on my website so that, if you want to see it in higher quality, you'll be able to do that. But I'm going to jump right in. Once I kind of share and optimize for video, which is best for you, I can't see anybody. So if you want to get my attention, unmute yourself and just ask a question. I'm a college professor during the day. I'm used to being interrupted all the time. It's completely fine. It won't bother me in the least. If questions get out of control, I'll say something, but I want this to be kind of interactive. We're going to start with the definition of race walking, go through it, and then talk about how you actually officiate it. One of the things to point out is people have different opinions, and even Gary just popped in. Gary and I may have different opinions on things, and that's okay. It's good for you to hear different opinions on the topic. So I'm going to share my screen. It will be optimized for video, so I can no longer see you guys, and we're going to get rolling. I'm going to try to do this in just about an hour, but there's a lot of material. This was a shot at the Olympics of the 50K race walk. Everybody demonstrating great technique. If you looked closely, I think actually this image doesn't highlight it, but if you look closely at images, you could see people off the ground. That does not mean that they are illegal. Okay. Come on, move forward. All right. So Gary, are you back? Are you out there? Can you say something?
Mute myself. That picture was a stop action picture of race walkers. We judge people live, so they have to be in motion. And in motion, the definition says we have to visibly see them losing contact. That's what Jeff was referring to.
Yep, we'll get to all that. So Gary, you're a world athletics lecturer. You have officiated at the highest level in the world, including the Olympics. I'm working my way up that chain. Now I'm an area judge for NACAC. Between us, I'd say we have a lot of experience in race walking. Not quite all the way back to 1904 when it started as an Olympic event, or this picture, which I bought from some estate of somebody from the 1930s, which was a Coney Island race walk. But over time, race walking has evolved and the technique has evolved. And many of us in the sport are on the older end of the life cycle here. And so we've seen different race walkers. And when I learned to walk in the 80s, the rules were different than today. And if you learned to walk in the 60s, the rules might have been different, but we have to evolve along with it. And we're going to go through what the current definition of race walking is and how it differentiates from running. So we have a series of videos where we're going to take you through that race walking is neither running nor normal walking. It is something different. So here is just a traditional group of runners. Okay, and most of what we're showing is in slow motion. You see that there is a flight phase where both feet are off the ground, and when the foot strikes the ground in the front, that the leg is bent, not straightened at the knee. Oh, I did not mean to hit that. Sorry. Okay, now let's just look at a group of pedestrians. When we talk about pedestrians, we're saying people who are walking and not adhering necessarily to the rules of race walking. So we see them walking and we see that when they strike the ground, that the knee is flexed. Okay, most pedestrians are not going to come off the ground. Okay, now let's look at a group of slow race walkers. And when race walkers are going slow, it's far easier to be able to tell that they are actually race walking. Okay, sorry, just checking chat and make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, so here we look at a group of slow race walkers. We see that the leg fully extends and is straightened, not bent at the knee at the moment of contact. And because they're slow race walkers, they always have one foot on the ground. This is not what we'll see when we look at elite walkers.
Jeff, could you go back for a second?
of course.
Just in addition to seeing that the leg is straight upon contact, it remains straight until it's past the vertical directly under the body. That's important. So they're straightening and not flexing the knee.
Correct.
Whereas in normal walking, the knee can flex. It will flex.
Okay, so now let's look at a group of faster walkers. And again, realize, well, this is full speed, right? Very, very hard to tell full speed race walking, especially on video. And I'm not going to bore everybody, but if anyone is really interested, there is a way to record video of race walking where it's easier to tell, but it requires a lot of thought. So we see this is slow motion and freeze frame. We saw that at one point, both feet were off the ground. That is completely acceptable and legal race walking. And you may look at that and say, oh my God, they're really off the ground. And Gary and I can assure you, we have plenty of footage of people significantly more off the ground than that. The question is, do you see visible loss of contact when you're looking at it?
When
It's
they're
not
moving.
whether you see if the foot is high or the shoulders are bobbing or the head is bobbing. Do you see visible loss of contact in the feet? Go ahead, Gary.
When they're moving, not when they're standing still.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, when the picture is still.
Correct. Yeah, because it'd be if they're not moving and they have both feet off the ground,
It's
that's a
tough.
pretty good trick. I'd like to learn that one.
Yeah. But even at slow motion, it's hard to see if they're off the ground.
Correct. All right. So now let's just look at a comparison of a single runner and a single race walker. Okay. Hopefully you can tell the difference, right? The person in the front is race walking. They're fully extending their leg. They're keeping it extended or straightened through the stride past vertical. And then our friend Alan James there is demonstrating running, where he is off the ground and flexing the knee. Let's play it one more time just so you can look at that. Nice, legal, efficient race walking technique. And if if I had better control of the video, there you go, right? Just a hair off the ground. Okay, you cannot pick that up to the human eye. We'll go into exactly how much you can pick up, but I can assure you that is not visible to the human eye at full speed. Okay, so now we'll look at a single pedestrian and many race walkers. So you should be able to pick out who the pedestrian is, right? The pedestrian is the one that lands with the bent knee, that stays bent through the stride, and the other guys and women are walking with a fully extended straightened knee. Okay,
So it's our friend with the red cap.
Yep, he's actually a multi-time Olympic race walker who volunteered to be the scapegoat. Okay. So now we're going to look at a single runner and many race walkers. Okay, and you can see visible loss of contact. You can see that the knee is bent, very different than everybody else in the image. Okay, now let's just look at a single race walker. So at slow-mo, you might be able to see that there's visible loss of contact, but at full speed, you would not. Okay, and especially over Zoom, you've got to do things in slow motion because the frame rate of Zoom is too slow to accurately depict race walking. All right, so now we'll look at a group of race walkers. Okay, that was our girl from before. And then they should be following. Come on. What happened to our group of race walkers? There they are. Okay, that's Maria Mikta-Coffey, two-time Olympian. Okay. All right, so what is the actual definition of race walking? All right, this is the US track and field definition, which is the same as the World Athletics definition. Race walking is a progression of steps. So we're not judging a step, we're judging a progression of steps, so taken that the walker makes contact with the ground so that no visible to the human eye loss of contact occurs. And officials like Gary and I and many people in race walking don't love the way this has been written. It's very subjective what to the human eye means, but that's the definition we have to work with. And we have taken a very scientific and methodical approach as to try to quantify that and show that and educate officials on exactly what that means. And then the second is that the advancing leg must be straightened, i.e. not bent at the knee, from the moment of first contact with the ground until in the vertical upright position. We'll go into detail on both of these, but we'll take each part separately because they're two very different.
And Jeff, can I add something?
Yeah.
The progression of steps also applies to the bent knee rule. So you have to see multiple steps where the athlete is flexing at the knee before you can make that call.
So the way I like to say that is if somebody stumbles on a pothole and takes a bad step and then corrects themselves, you should not be giving them a red card for bent knee. All right, this is just a nice relaxed video out in Chula Vista where a lot of people are training to make the Olympic team, right? It just shows nice, smooth, legal race walking technique. Okay. All right. So when you are judging walking, you're going to see lots of different styles and different levels of loss of contact. These three pictures took me, I don't know, I think I looked through 50 to 100,000 photos that I had taken of elite walkers. And I'm not exaggerating because just at the World Championships alone this year, I took 15,000 photos of just race walking. These were the only three who had a visible or a momentary double support phase. So you wouldn't even see this to the human eye, but the camera picked up that there was a moment where both feet were in contact with the ground. And there's a story behind each of these pictures. We don't really have time to go into it, so I'm going to skip it. But let's just say it was unique that they had this, not normal. Almost every elite walker will have a moment where both feet are off the ground. Jeff
was taking pictures at the World Championships in Berlin in 2009. I was judging there. I said, Jeff, it would be nice to have some pictures that if you could show me of walkers who were point to point, heel and toe, making contact. Jeff had none. And he must have taken hundreds and hundreds of pictures.
Oh no, thousands of pictures.
Yeah, not a single one.
So it just doesn't happen unless you're breaking down at the end of the race or something like that, which is pretty much what was happening in a lot of these cases.
Now, in fairness to Jeff's taking pictures, thousands of pictures happen when you take video, and each.
Oh no, Gary, don't talk tech. My non-video camera took 10,000 photos in 2.5 hours.
Okay.
Stick to the race walking.
My camera couldn't do that.
No, I understand. I'm very spoiled. Okay. No loss of contact, right? So obviously legal, right? Both feet are in contact with the ground for a moment. Is this ideal? Not for an elite race walker, because the rule says to the human eye, which means it is allowed that you have a slight loss of contact phase. Okay, so it is to the human eye, even a very slight here. This is Miranda. And just in Miranda's defense, because she'll show some stuff that may not be legal, she was filming this for me to do demonstrations. So back foot's off the ground, front foot's off the ground, just for a moment. Again, we're looking at a still. You would never see this in the real world. Okay, it's only a single frame. And the yellow is approximating how much she's off the ground. And we'll show you some obnoxious people later. That is not visible. Okay. Now she's off a little more, still very slight by elite standards. Okay, you would not recognize this to the human eye. All right, so the rule of thumb, It's been studied as recently as 2019 in a scientific setting. Judges elite judges tend to pick up loss of contact between 40 and 45 milliseconds of loss of contact. The video that's shot here, I believe, was just shot with my cell phone. So cell phones can shoot 240 frames a second, which means that she was off the ground for 9 frames, which would seem like, oh my God, to someone old school. But that's less than 40 milliseconds there.
And Jeff, can I interrupt?
Yep.
40 milliseconds is 4/10 of a second, right? Or is it 4/100 of a second?
40. Oh, you're going to make me do math late in the day. 4 milliseconds would be 4 1,000ths. 40 would be. Yeah, I think it's
4/100.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's 400ths. So that's a very short amount of time.
Try clicking a stopwatch and get 4/100 of a second. You can't. So it's a small amount of time, but they can be off the ground.
All right. So this is somebody who actually was disqualified. And Gary, you know what's frightening? Nobody else will appreciate this. Look at how much less that is than the picture we've been looking at from Eugene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is somebody who decided to take the lead at the World Championship and got a whole bunch of red cards all at once because he flew off the ground. Right. Again,
not in Eugene. This was a different.
This was World Championships in London. And, one of the things about being a credentialed photographer, which I often am at these events, is I can set myself up and take pictures as if I were a judge, since I know the judging and I know the photography. And he would have come into the field of view and certainly have been very questionable. When I'm filming, I can't always tell live if they were illegal or not. Okay, but it's certainly a matter of judgment. Beginning walkers typically don't lift, so you'll only see this with more advanced walkers. All right, and if we had to be safe, we could say that if you were over 50 milliseconds, you're probably illegal, right? So if we look, right, can you be too legal? This is someone who has excessive double support phase. It's not a moment of double support, but many moments of double support. And that's going to be basically what we say is visible contact. We don't need this, but you will see this often with beginning walkers, and the beginning walkers will struggle with the second part of the definition, not the loss of contact part. So the shifting of where you make your calls often depends on the skill level of the walker.
And if I can add something, I was working with 2 very good high school race walkers this evening at a clinic, and they had awkward looking technique, but they have been successful. And I told them that race walking really is a beauty contest. If you can make it look good and you can make it look very smooth, you can push the limits of the loss of contact. And so that's what they worked on.
It is a beauty contest when you're coaching an athlete. You want to make them look as good as possible.
And the people that don't look good are the ones that get the judge's attention.
All right, so now we're going to look at someone with visible contact and momentary contact. And as I said at the beginning, how good this looks over Zoom is questionable. My plan in the next month or 2 is to get all this up with my source material onto racewalk.com so that you guys can look at it, a little bit better. And this is shown in, I think, real speed. The slower walker, you can see that both feet are on the ground at the same time. The faster walker, I can't say that I see contact. I can also say that I don't see a loss of contact. I don't see the visible loss of contact, right? And that's that gray area. So as long as you're not seeing a flight phase, you don't make a call. Okay, now let's look at it in slow motion, right? In very slow motion, and this is super slow by today's standards, right? We can see the flight phase. But we were just watching it at full speed and you couldn't see that. So it just goes to show you that there is a flight phase at full speed. You don't see it unless it gets over 50
And
milliseconds.
if I can interrupt, Jeff, for those of you who are real beginners at this, the loss of contact, you'll see the back foot leave the ground before the front foot reaches the ground. That's what he means by flight phase.
Correct. And Gary, just interrupt. You don't have to ask for
Okay.
it. You have supreme executive power.
No, you're the teacher.
I am but an apprentice to you, my friend, except when you talk photography. You and McGovern was giving me a lecture on photography. I'm like, really? All right. So that was just, that was under the 40 millisecond threshold. All right. So now we can see a comparison. And I will actually say that Miranda isn't that bad. This was the most Miranda could get off the ground. If we look at some footage from the World Championships, we would see much worse than this. All right. And this is full speed. I mean, elite race walking. Miranda's a two-time Olympian. Actually, is she 2 or 1? I don't remember. Miranda's an Olympian. And when you look at it at full speed, you can't see it. When you slow it down, right, you can see it. And compare this slight flight phase on the left to the other two, and you can see there's a difference. And when you get to elite walkers, you would see even more of a difference. Okay, so now we're starting to see walkers with a lot more flight under their feet. Both feet are off the ground for a significant amount of time. And when Gary and I analyze this, basically we measure the amount of loss of contact of the rear foot, add that to the amount of loss of contact to the front foot, add it up and kind of come up with a total loss of contact for somebody. Okay. In this case, right, if you looked at this as the first picture, you might say, well, that's a lot of loss of contact. That's actually not something you would see to the human eye. Okay. Then we got to a race. This was last year. And the individual in the front was actually off the ground, I think just a hair more than the individual to the left. However, they walked with very different styles. So the question is, can you just objectively say that, oh, if someone's off 40 milliseconds or 45 milliseconds or 50, that illegal or illegal? The answer is no, because the rule is to the human eye. Do you see the foot coming off the ground before the front foot strikes the ground? If you don't make the call. So we're going to look at these two, and we're going to look at their stride one after another. And I'll tell you, I was judging this and left the cameras running in the background. So I don't look at the camera while it's running. And the person on the top looked absolutely awful, right? And got peppered with red cards, yellow paddles, got disqualified. The person on the bottom looked picture perfect, was walking 2 minutes faster for a 5K and didn't get a call. And I thought for sure that the person on the bottom would only be off the ground for like 30 milliseconds. And if memory serves me correct, it was just north of 50. We'll see why they were judged differently. This is the second part of their stride. Okay. And, if you're not looking closely, you won't see what the difference is. So we'll highlight it for you. Okay. Here are the two walkers. And walker number 22 is lifting their foot higher off the ground. Their leg is coming parallel or close to parallel to the ground. Walker 16 is very intentionally keeping his foot lower to the ground. And so even though walker 16 had as much or more of a flight phase, we couldn't see it because the foot was so much lower to the ground. So you're just looking to see, is there visible loss of contact? If you see it, you make the call. And unfortunately, if someone does not have the beauty pageant walk, does not look as good, it may highlight their loss of contact more than somebody else. Okay, so Number 16 was 3 inches off the ground. Number 22 was 6 inches off the ground, double the foot height. And we weren't the first people to look at this and do this kind of analysis. There was a study in Japan that basically said walkers with a higher rear foot carriage tend to get more red cards, which makes anecdotal sense.
And so if you're judging, one of the things you'll pick up here is that if you see walkers with a high rear foot push off and the leg almost becoming parallel to the ground, you're probably justified in giving them a call. Because you could see that.
Right. So the conclusion is we may not like to admit it, but to some degree it's a beauty contest. But notice that Gary and I are not talking about what's going on with their arms, what's going on with their head. Oh, I see your hair bobbing up and down. That's not what we're talking about. As a judge, you should not be looking at the upper body to make a call. You might look at the upper body when they're far away and go, ooh, that head's bouncing. I'm going to look at them more closely when they get nearby me. But when you're judging, you're really just looking at the feet for loss of contact, and we'll talk about the knee in a second. But if their feet and legs don't look beautiful in terms of technique, right, that style may affect how we judge them. All right, let's move on to the second half, which is the straightening of the knee. And Jack Starr was my star pupil. I started coaching him at 65. He's now 94. We were talking about whether or not he's making a comeback for the 95-year-old age bracket. And he had a knobby old knee that straightened perfectly. And we'll see that. Okay, it is difficult for beginner walkers. But if you're asked to judge, right, you've got to judge based on the rules.
You have to go back to you didn't comment on the first point. If you tried walking with your legs straight all the time, you're not going to get very far. So we're not looking for legs to be straight the whole time.
Yep, and we'll show that in a second when we look at some videos. There are some master walkers that claim they can't comply. There is a National Power Walking Association, right? Race walking says you have to follow this definition. If you can't, you're not race walking. Okay, so we're going to look at the stride or the step over while the leg is in support, and then we'll look at it while the leg is in flight or swinging forward. So we start and we see that Miranda has struck the ground. The leg is already straightened. It stays straightened to the vertical position. Then an elite walker usually does, but does not have to, keep the leg straightened past vertical. And so often if somebody looks like they're bending their knee, right, if we were coaching, we would say, keep your leg straightened longer. The elites are all doing it. But as Gary pointed out, when the foot is about to come off the ground, and if you look at Miranda, the foot is breaking basically at the ball of the foot. At that point, the knee starts to bend and the leg is ready to move and swing forward. So we can look at this one frame at a time. The foot strikes the ground. There is a reasonable angle below the foot. Good walkers will keep their hands lower, close to the sternum, and also behind the hip. But we're not judging by that. That's just good style. And you see the rear foot has really rolled up onto the back toe. Okay, as she progresses through her stride, the foot flattens, not all at once. The leg stays straightened. She progresses forward. The leg stays straightened. Now we're in the vertical position. This is the last point. The leg must be straightened for purposes of adhering to the definition. It stays straightened longer because she's a very strong athletic walker. And then as she's ready to bring it forward, the knee starts to bend, and then it bends as it's about to come off the ground. Okay, so that is while the foot is in contact with the ground. Okay, and we see it all over again. All right. I'm now going to show you, oh, and I'm not going to show you, I'm going to show you somebody violating it. And people can violate it multiple ways. So this walker lands bent, but eventually straightens the knee. Right? That's not good enough by the definition of race walking. It must land straightened and stay straightened through vertical. So we can see what a walker looks like when they're landing bent. It's pretty visible, even, I hope, over Zoom. Now we see it in very slow motion. And eventually they straighten. So they go, I'm straightening my leg. Yes, but not at the right point. All right. And what's interesting where it froze is, look, his leg is straightened there, but his foot has not hit the ground. And we'll talk more about that in a second.
Once he puts his weight on the leg, it flexes. The knee flexes.
Okay. So here's an example of that. This person is about to land. Their leg is straightened. The weight goes on the foot, the knee bends, and it stays bent in vertical. So we can see this person in action. So they come, they land, and then they bend.
He's got what we would consider a hiking motion.
Okay. What is very important to realize is legs and knees come in many forms. Okay. So what we're looking to do is to look at the femur and the fibula and basically where the knee is. And if they form a straight line, if they line up, they're legal. We're not worried if somebody is bow-legged. And I don't know if it's people race walk a long time and they become bow-legged, or because they're bow-legged, maybe they decide not to run and therefore they race walk and there's not as much abuse to the leg, so they can race walk better than they could run. Some people have a knobby knee. Knobby knee does not mean the knee is bent. You look at the leg, it's a straight line. And again, you wait until the heel strikes the ground. We'll see that in the next frame. But that was a good example of a knobby knee. And also hyperextension, bending the knee backward, is acceptable. It's considered straightened. Okay, so let's just look at a close-up of Miranda's leg to see what good legal technique looks like. She basically is bent until the moment before she strikes the ground. And almost simultaneously with the ground, she strikes the ground with the leg straightened. And I don't know about this schmo over here, Jeff Salvage, right? He is walking, and he is walking with a bent knee. He's landing bent and staying bent. And you can really see the difference between the two. And I will tell you, when I did all the wrong walks for the videos, it's painful, right? It's easier to race walk better. Okay, so again, we look and we see really good legal race walking technique.
A very efficient motion compared to the hiker.
So again, now we see it side by side. When Miranda strikes the ground, there's a straight line through the knee. It stays straight in vertical. It's even straight after. And here I am, never straightening my knee at all. Okay. If we look here and we go, oh, that knee is bent. Well, but her foot hasn't struck the ground yet. So you do not judge the bent knee until after heel strike. And that's very, very important. So if you look at Katie over here, right, she has just struck the ground and the leg is completely straightened and it looks good. Robin will be straight when she strikes the ground, but it hasn't struck the ground yet. So you have to wait till you see that contact to decide if you're making a call or not. Okay. These were a collection of walkers. I believe they're all legal, but they have very different styles.
All right, stop for a second.
Okay, hang on.
Stop.
Yeah. Okay. What do you want me to stop on?
Well, this is one of the girls that I worked with this evening.
Ah, very good.
At my clinic. And guess what I tried to get her to work on? Look, watch her walk.
Arm carriage.
That.
Hip rotation.
Yeah, she has almost no hip rotation. meaning it looks like her hips are just bopping up and down rather than backwards and forward. And that's when I showed her how to walk correctly, she said, oh, this is easier. So she has no hip rotation forward.
Okay. This is someone who's going to land. Yeah. Landing like flat foot. Hang on. Oh, I went too far. Let me go back. There we go. So I'm not sure why it's getting jittery, but I'm going to move it forward manually. So normally when we looked at Miranda, the toe was pointed. She's landing almost completely flat-footed. Something Gary and I used to say you would never see in a real race and see the knee straightened, but she's straight, right? It just looks awful, but you're not judging on what the foot is as much as what you can see. And if you see that leg straightening and staying straightened, then you're good. She's good. All right, now we're gonna look at the next one. Okay, and she, completely legal. You can get distracted by socks and different things. Try not to. Okay. Why did we put her in here, Gary? I can't remember. We had a reason for showing her.
Is she off the ground?
She's definitely off a hair.
Yeah.
But nothing extra. There was something that we didn't like or whatever that we were highlighting. I don't remember what it is though. All right, Gary, you want to take the lead on this? You're always better at this part.
For those of you who only judge on the track, you want to look at the picture on the left. If you're judging on the track and on roads, you might want to consider the road course. In a race on a track, in the United States, there are 5 judges, including a chief judge. So we'll divide the track up into 4 sections, 4 zones, so that if you take the middle of the final straightaway and you go to the middle of the first turn, that's the first zone. Then the second zone comes out of the turn onto the straightaway, and then the third turn and the fourth zone. Or you might, if you want to, have straights and turns being zones, but that's a little more difficult to do, and it means that the judge is only going to be watching people on the turn, where you're going to get, particularly if you're on a bank track, you're going to have problems with what you see. So you want to be able to split it up into 4, and the 5th is for the chief judge, who has the opportunity to go around the track should they decide to do that. And you might, in a short race, make 1 trip around. In longer races, you might make a couple of trips around. The chief judge could help position judges. What I like to see at the end of the race is to have the judge who is judging on that first turn come back onto the straightaway, have the judge that is on the last turn come onto the straightaway, and have the chief judge in that final section of the track, so we can have 3 judges watching the final straightaway on the track. On a road course, you can have up to 8 judges, including the chief judge, which might be number 9. It depends upon the size of the course. Boy, if you have a 1 kilometer course, you really don't want to put 9 judges out there. So you have to break them into zones and assign them areas. And then you get into the idea that in a longer race, you might rotate the judges so they change positions, so they don't get stale at one point. Plus, so that judges are not always judging the turn, because they might see something, if they're there too much, they may just start thinking they're seeing bent-kneed walking when they're not, or loss of contact, or the cones are in the way, or whatever. So we move them around. And you also try to get 3 judges in the final straightaway so that you can look at the walkers. So if you do have to come up with red cards, you get the right number of red cards to disqualify somebody. But that's something for later in the video. Are there any questions on judging with the zones? Internationally, there are 6 judges, but the chief judge does not judge during the race, only judges the last 100 meters of the race. Jeff, take it over.
Oh, it's still all you. This is your, this is
Okay. So
this is
now
for you to decide.
the judge's viewing area. We're judging a progression of steps. What you try to do is to look on a 45-degree angle as the walkers are coming towards you, and a 15-degree angle as they move away from you. If they're further away, you're not gonna get a good view of the walkers. So there's a question that I would have. If the walkers are taking, let's say 6 steps to come across that on the track itself, how far back should you be? If there's 6 meters, if it takes them 6 meters to go from the first point to the perpendicular point, how far back should you be? It's a simple mathematical equation. That's a right triangle. So if one base is 6 and and it's a 90-degree angle, the angle coming out to where the judge is should be the same distance. So you can't judge being close. You got to be back. If you're on the track, you want to be out in lanes 4 or 5, not in 1, 2, or 3, because then you're too close to see a progression of steps where you can actually fairly judge. So here's a picture showing a judge watching the race walker. Does he need to bend over at the waist? No, maybe he was tired, but you certainly don't have to bend over or lie on the ground, because if you're far enough away, you can see the loss of contact. Okay, Jeff.
All right.
And I already answered the question. Okay. All right. So now judges are given 2 tools in addition to paperwork. They get 2 paddles, one with bent knee and one with the symbol for loss of contact. That symbol is on the opposite side of the paddle also, so that there's not confusion when you show. In the old days, we had a single paddle with loss of contact on one side and bent knee on the other. And when you held it up and showed, let's say, the loss of contact to the athlete, spectators saw a bent knee and they said, what is that person doing? They're not bent kneed. So we came up with 2 paddles, both yellow. That's why when you show that paddle, you're actually showing it to give the athlete a caution, to give them an opportunity to correct. Or if you think they're way off, you show it to them so that they will correct. And here's a judge, I don't know his name, but he's showing the walker the paddle, and he steps towards the athlete, makes eye contact with the athlete, and in effect sticks it in their face to show it to them. I have, when showing paddles to the athletes and making the eye contact, I will point the paddle towards them and then show them the infraction. I normally get a response from them where they nod their head and say, yes, I got it. If you think that you haven't gotten the walker's attention, you can also yell out their number. But you know, if you're judging an international race, you might get people who don't speak English. So that's why we really shouldn't be, doing anything other than showing the paddle. Jeff, go ahead. Okay. If a judge thinks that the athlete is failing to comply with the definition, that there's visible loss of contact and that there's visible bent knee, then you can issue a red card to the athlete. You do that by writing down the competitor's number, the reason for it. You can see the 2 symbols are there. And one way that you can circle that if you want, Well, one way we know, on a USATF card or an international card, you put the time of the infraction down. You put the judge's number. Normally, the chief judge will assign you to as judge number 1, 2, 3, 4. In the United States, we tend to have our cards already filled out with the number on it. And all you have to do is sign the card. So that's essentially what is done in filling out a red card. Now, you do have to keep in mind, you cannot write a second red card on that same athlete. Once you write a red card on an athlete, that athlete is no longer in the competition as far as you're concerned. So don't mess things up by giving a loss of contact call and then later in the race saying, oh, he's bent knee, I'm going to give him a bent knee call. No, that person is already finished as far as you're concerned. Jeff, you can go on.
Well, I'm going to add one thing.
Oh,
It's finished as far as the paperwork is concerned, but you
yes.
shouldn't make it obvious to the athlete that you're no longer paying attention to them, or they can intentionally run by you knowing that you've already given them a red.
Of course. And the red cards are usually picked up by a card runner and given to the recorder. Now, in USATF races, not necessarily in masters races, and probably not in high school or junior Olympic races where the races are short, we use a penalty zone. This has been an attempt to try to improve the race walking or the results of race walking so people don't get disqualified. So the way this works now, if if an athlete has received 3 red cards, they get sent to a penalty zone. We used to call it the pit lane, but it's a penalty zone where they can, it's usually set up with either hurdles or cones, and the athlete can go in there and walk back and forth. They can jog, they can stretch, and depending upon the distance of the race, the penalty increases. So if it's less than 5K or less, it's 30 seconds. If it's 10K, it's 1 minute. And for each kilometer after that, it's another full minute. So a walker in a 35K would spend 3.5 minutes in the penalty zone. A 50K, they would spend 5 minutes. They're also, in some longer races, you might have a porta-john in the area. The athlete's not allowed to leave and go to the porta-john. Let them go to the porta-john on their own time. When you're in the penalty zone, they're there serving a penalty, period. If there are questions, you can do it in the chat. I think, Jeff, there's one question. There's something in the chat right now, so you can look at that.
Nope, we're good. That was from before. We're fine. Okay.
When the same athlete who already has 3 red cards from 3 different judges, the athlete is disqualified if there's no penalty zone. And the recorder will verify this. The recorder will then tell the chief judge. So there's another important official. It's called the recorder. The chief judge or the chief judge's assistant, somebody else who's working to help the chief judge, who doesn't judge, but will have a red paddle and can step out on the track and stop the walker who has 3 cards, because you want to get him off the track as soon as you can. So they don't influence the outcome of the race by being illegal and then drawing other people off. So it's 3, if there's no penalty zone, 3 red cards from 3 different judges, and the athlete is disqualified, and then they get notified. If you don't get to notify the person before the race is over, they're still disqualified. The disqualification occurs when that 3rd red card comes to the recorder. And that, so we don't have somebody saying, oh, but no one told me. Well, you can be told afterwards. And usually what we do with high school kids who have a short race is we keep them all lined up, and then, you know, the chief judge will come over and tell the people, well, I'm sorry, but you had 3, or you had 2, or you had 1, because they like to know. Jeff, go ahead.
Guys, if I can interject, this is Ron.
Sure.
When an athlete is in the penalty zone, they cannot take any other aid or assistance also.
Correct. They can't
Good point. Yep.
they can't help themselves, they can't relieve themselves. They can walk back and forth, they can talk to their coach, they can complain, oh, I don't know why I'm getting these calls. The coach can give them advice. They just, they could even sit down on the ground if they want to. They can stretch, they could jog, they can do anything, but they can't get things that help them physically, either drinking or relieving. Okay, with a penalty zone, if the athlete receives 4 red cards from 4 different judges, they're disqualified. All right. Now, if the 4 red cards come in before the athlete goes into penalty zone, too bad, they're disqualified. All right. If the athlete receives a 4th red card after, Jeff, I may be going ahead, and forgive me, but I didn't look at, I think the next picture probably has it. No, it doesn't. Okay, go back. If a 4th red card comes in after the athlete has served time in the penalty zone, they get disqualified. And again, if they pick up the 4th red card and they finish the race, they're still disqualified. Okay, go ahead. Now, so for the judges, you get a tally sheet. You get a place to record the yellow paddles that you've given. That's the 2nd and 3rd column. And you get a place to record your red cards that you give, so that you don't give cautions or yellow paddles on multiple occasions for the same infraction. And you don't give more than 1 red card for the athlete. So number 14 has received a yellow paddle for loss of contact. Number 15 has gotten a loss of contact yellow paddle, and 23 minutes later was given a red card. That number should not appear on their tally sheet again. Number 14 could get another yellow paddle from the same judge, judge number 5, if it was for bent knee. You're allowed to do that. But in most short races, you'll never see that. So you fill out the tally sheet, you sign all the things, you put down the race. And so you write down the competitor's number and the time of day that goes in here. Now, in some areas, I know in New York State, we have a modified form where you just circle the infraction and you don't write the time down. The time is only important if you're trying to create an historical record of the race, but sometimes it's just quicker to circle the infraction and be done with it. But USATF rules require that you write the time down, and we'll see why in a minute. Okay. All right. The recorder sits at a table, has a sheet that records the red cards as they come in, and then after the race is over and the tally sheets have been collected, the recorder records all of the yellow paddles. You end up getting a good history of the race. They also will write down the time when the athlete was notified of their disqualification. So going down, 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, you can see number 15 had a bunch of calls and got disqualified. The time was written down. In good race walking, there is a posting board where the symbols for either loss of contact or bent knee go up on the board. And in this case, it's an old posting board because it only has room for 3 red cards. The 4th one would go up if we had the penalty zone, and if you had number 6 and you only have 3 columns, you could just stick it in there somewhere so that people would know that the person was disqualified. So this is a race with a lot of judging going on, but the posting board is there for the athlete's knowledge so they know they've received red cards. It gives them an opportunity to correct. And I tell an athlete, if you've gotten a yellow paddle from one judge and nobody else, you're fine. If you've gotten yellow paddles from 2 judges, you're fine. If you've gotten yellow paddles from 3 or 4 judges, I begin to worry and then look at the posting board. If you see 1 red card, don't worry about it too much. You see a second one, be careful, because the third one's going to cost you, whether it's in the penalty zone or disqualification. So 1 is not so bad. 2 is, be careful. And the third time, you're either going to be disqualified or you're going to be visiting the penalty zone.
And I just like to point out, we're going over a lot of stuff very quickly. At the end of this, I'm going to give you guys a link. We have videos explicitly showing you like how to fill out the summary sheet, how to fill out your tally sheet, all of this stuff. So, it's coming kind of fast and furious, but we've got a pace for it to be slower as well. An athlete, there was a question, an athlete can step off the course and return at the same point as long as there's no advantage gained, correct?
Not in a track race.
But on a road.
On a road course, yes.
Okay. Make sure I didn't miss anything else.
In that situation, the athlete is probably visiting the porta john.
Yep.
But they can't run off the track. They have to walk off the track. So this is the summary sheet. If it was bigger, you would see what I talked about. The recorder records all of the information, which gives you an historical picture of what was going on. Athlete number 12 was legal, but was questioned by 3 judges. 3 judges couldn't make their mind up. They gave him yellow paddles. But athlete number 15, you can see all the judges thought that person was either off the ground or in danger of being off the ground. So they're fairly consistent. Go ahead, Jeff. And this is another version of a red card posting board. The symbols were white. This was used for a world championship, the world world under 20 championship, and it was very satisfactory. The athlete's numbers on the board, the infraction symbol, and you can see the number of red cards that people receive. And after the 3rd card, they either go to the penalty zone or they say goodbye, depending upon which system you're using. Okay. I have a philosophy about judging, all right, that in most races, most of the athletes will be within the definition. Some of the athletes might be questionable or in danger. And a few of the athletes might be illegal. If you use that philosophy, you're not going to do a lot of harm in judging a race, particularly if you've never really judged before. So keep in mind that if athletes are walking within the definition, you take no action. The call you make is nothing. They look good to me, or I can't make up my mind. So you leave them be. Jeff? All right. You give the benefit of the doubt to the athlete, and you only call what you can see, right? We can see this because it's stop action, but probably we might not see it if it was a moving picture or a live walker. We have to see it before we can call it. All right. So there are race walking officials that USA Track and Field certifies. You have judges who make the decisions about adherence to the definition of race walking. You have a chief judge who supervises all the judges. And if we have a national championship or an international trial race, that chief judge, in addition to judging, also has the power to disqualify in the last 100 meters without any previous red cards. So that position is something where there's a lot of power, and the judge will only use it if the person, in many cases, if they're making a mockery of the event. If you've got two people who are duking it out and they're both equally, let's say, deserving of a red card, but they're not flagrant or really going crazy. In the United States, you give them a red card. You don't disqualify them directly. But if they are taking advantage of the rules and creating, in your mind, something that is bad for race walking, or they're because they're flagrant, in those situations, the chief judge has the power to disqualify directly. They have a right to finish the race, and they have a right to protest that call. But if you can't make your mind up about how bad they were, you give them a red card and hope that maybe it was their third or fourth, depending on what you're using. The chief judge's assistant only relays notices. They do not judge. So if the recorder can't get a hold of the chief judge because they're out on the course somewhere, the chief judge's assistant is empowered to show the red paddle to stop the athlete. Jeff, we can go on. All right. There's also a recorder. In some countries, they're called a secretary. They keep the historical record by logging in the summary sheet. Then you have a posting board operator who puts the red cards up on the board. You also have a penalty zone operator, and you might have more than one person there because they have to time the amount of time that they're in. They keep a record, a recording of a record of when they enter and when they leave. And that's another position that we have within race walking. Jeff? Okay. In a typical race, most walkers are within the rules. Some walkers are in danger and should be cautioned or given a yellow paddle. A few walkers may not be within the rules and should be disqualified. A yellow paddle is shown to caution a walker. A red card is written to mark your vote for disqualification. It takes red cards from separate judges to be disqualified. All right, 3 or 4, depending upon whether the system is being used. When you make the calls, make sure you record it on your tally sheet so you don't give the same walker another red card. Again, once you give them one red card, you cannot give them another. You have to act independently. Try not to be influenced by the spectators that are behind you who are saying, oh, so-and-so is running, or that person's cheating, or whatever. You make your mind up and you do it separately. And don't be afraid to make calls because you're the member of a panel. It takes 3 or 4. And you know, in a track race, 4 is 80% of the judges have to agree to disqualify somebody. So your calls alone do not disqualify a walker. Now, in a penalty race, and Jeff, I don't think we got to this with the penalty zone. If a walker gets a third red card and they've already finished, that penalty gets added to their time. So if somebody finishes a 5K with 3 red cards and they didn't serve time in the penalty zone, 30 seconds get added. If they finish a 50K, they add 5 minutes to their time. And that's something that you know, you'll see more of when you get out on the course to judge. Jeff, go ahead.
So come on and join us. All right. Just so you know, we'll send out a link. But if you go to my site, racewalk.com, and you go /judging, there's a whole bunch of videos. And I'm just gonna go to that quickly to show you. Hang on. Oh, there we go. All right, so racewalk.com /judging. Okay. So there's a video on how to judge. There's practice videos in terms of doing a test with live action walkers. So I'm just gonna jump to this. And you can see walkers kind of in slow motion coming by. And the goal is for you to judge which ones are legal or not. There are answers to that. There's how to fill out. This is the old officiating clinic. We'll replace it with a new one. How to fill out a tally sheet. How to operate a penalty zone. And these are all animations we painfully did over time. How to fill out a summary sheet. And this is something I'd like everybody to do. It won't play very well over Zoom, but if we watch in you know, if you go to YouTube, it is an actual test. So there is a form that goes with it, a little Google form, which is right here. And you can actually take a test and see how well you do. The answers will get emailed to me. I'll then reach out to you. And the main goal is to go over this with you so that you learn from what you're getting wrong. It's not going to be used to judge you as a judge, so to speak. The penalty time was covered earlier. There was a chart that we put up that basically showed the time penalty depending on the distance of the race. Okay. So we thank all of you guys for coming. That's pretty much what we have. We'll answer any questions anybody might have. And it's not showing me. I don't know why. Stop video.
Okay. Jeff, if you would just is that Ron?
It is.
Sure.
I just wanted to let everybody know that here in New Jersey, we do have a minimum of 8 judged race walks a year, not counting Junior Olympics, etc. With that in mind, everyone is invited to join us and mentor with an established judge. As you stand beside them, you can glean their years of knowledge and learn so you feel more comfortable when you are out on your own. That's it.
Great. Any questions from anybody? And appreciate your time. It's running a little late.
We have people popping up on the chat.
I have something to say. This is Phyllis. I
Yep.
want to first of all thank Jeff, Gary, Ron. Just so you all know, this is a gold mine. This is like hitting a lottery ticket, officials, to have these 3 gentlemen to give this clinic here and to give their expertise, their years of experience. I can't say enough for what I've learned and know of them. And the value of the information and how great it is. Take advantage of this. Everyone doesn't have this opportunity or these individuals. Gary is from the New York Association. He's not even from New Jersey.
I'm from Long Island.
Long Island, excuse me,
A different association.
It's
I used
totally
to be in New
different. That
York.
is so true. That is so true. My apologies on that. But also, I
And
want to
Phyllis,
know-
I may live in New Jersey, but I'll always be from Long Island.
Yes, and that is very true. A Long Island to the day you die. But guys, for officials, for paddles, Gary, any information or links, because we have quite a few that are looking forward to purchase.
It seems like I'm the only person in the country who has a source to manufacture them. My source has not answered my request for more paddles. So I am in the process of converting the old single paddle to where the infraction was on 2 fractions on one side to put them on. And I've been procrastinating, but if you contact me, and probably best is to send me an email at Gary Westerfield, one word, at verizon.net, and bug me, because sometimes when these emails scroll down and they get lost in antiquity, I forget that I have to make up a set of paddles. So
If he doesn't respond to you, Phyllis, email me and I'll bug him.
and Phyllis, I think I didn't respond to your email because
You
I'm
didn't.
getting this
You
nudging
did
in the
not,
back
and
of
I
my
busted your
mind.
chops about it. And
Yeah,
you
Thank
killed it.
you for backing me up, Jeff,
That's right. Phyllis is not guilty here.
because there are a lot of officials that really need paddles, and you were the number one,
The only,
the number one and only reference for that. And so Jeff, we've been on him, but we're going to continue to stay on him. And we're
Yep.
going
And you
to-
know, Gary, I gave you all of those paddles from Tom Easler when he passed away.
that's what I'm converting.
I know. So it's a legacy.
Not that
to
many
Tom.
left, but I'm doing that. Yeah.
See, what I'm doing now is the Jewish guilt that I learned on Long Island.
Yeah.
Right. Which is, it's Tom's legacy. So you got to make it last. Any other questions?
Jeff,
I had a question. This is Walt Gibbons from New Jersey.
Sure.
Could you explain the difference or when you would use a yellow paddle versus a red card? I wasn't clear on that.
I think that's
Sure.
good. And I don't want to make things more complicated, but internationally, the rules are written that you're supposed to show a yellow paddle before you go to a red card. And that makes sense because the yellow paddle gives the walker an opportunity to correct. Now, we have a system where red cards go up on a posting board, but the athlete might only see that once every kilometer or every 2 kilometers, depending on the size of the course. So a judicious yellow paddle for somebody who is breaking the definition would be helpful to get the person to correct, because maybe they were in the moment of competition, they just weren't paying attention. You show them a yellow paddle and then they correct. Well, we haven't really been coaching them, but you're using the yellow paddle for the purpose of it. Now, if you can't make your mind up, the athlete has an awkward technique. You can't make your mind up whether or not they're making contact. You give a yellow paddle. Or if, let's say, an athlete is going around a turn and they're not controlling their body and they're coming down a little flexed, you show them a yellow paddle. Should you give them a red paddle? Well, if you're going to have an opportunity to see them again, let them come by and see if they corrected and then go to the red paddle. Now, this is a philosophy.
Red card, not red
card.
paddle.
This is a philosophy of trying to help the sport by helping the athlete. And maybe it's from my many years of being a race walking judge and seeing how the rules have evolved. So I think the best thing to do is, if you question what they're doing, you show them a yellow paddle. If you think that they're illegal, give them a red card. But in a short race, I've given a red card and a yellow paddle at the same time, because the athlete needs the opportunity to correct, and they're not going to know that they have a red card maybe until 2 or 3 laps later, because the person who's running the red card into the recorder didn't get to you in time. I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm sort of being a little evasive.
Well, let me chime in. First of all, great question. It is when I started this, I think Gary wasn't on yet, and I said, there are different opinions and whatnot. This is the one thing that is somewhat subjective, and I think every judge applies a little different wisdom to it. I agree with what Gary's saying, but you can go to different races and the chief judge might coach the judges and say, hey, everybody, let's make sure we give a yellow paddle before a red card. But if it's a mile race, right, you don't really have that luxury. So it's not like there's one straight rule. Some judges are more strict, others are not. Gary and I have the philosophy, I think Ron shares it, that the benefit of the doubt always goes to the athlete. And, a yellow paddle is a great coaching tool. You can't get yourself in really trouble for giving the yellow. You know, it doesn't hurt the athlete. So if I have any question, I give him a yellow and then I'm ready to give him a red later. But if you were a little hesitant, again, that's kind of the style. Just like in Major League Baseball, when you're calling balls and strikes, right? The strike zone changes a little bit. There's going to be some subjectivity in anything that we do because all of this is to the human eye.
But Jeff, you used the coaching word. The judges are really not supposed to be coaching. So you really have to be, you know, at the beginning of a race, if I have an athlete who tears out at the beginning and is not race walking, I'll show them the yellow paddle and give them the red card. If they straighten up, that'll be the only red card they get, but they deserve that one red card.
Absolutely.
And if I prevented them from getting 3 red cards or 4 red cards, so be it. I helped the event. But if it's near the end of the race and you're not going to see the athlete again, and you have to make a choice between a yellow paddle and a red card, go with the red card. And if you're wrong and you're the only one that's given a red card, so be it. But if you're the 3rd red card or the 4th, depending upon the system, then the athlete gets disqualified and you were justified in giving the red card to them.
I have a quick question. Is
Sure.
it ever appropriate for the judges to communicate with one another on the course? If you have a 2,500 meter course and there's 6 judges, you're, whatever that is, 400 some meters apart, which is, quite a distance, right? And, if you catch an athlete, say, noticeably, running part of the course, right?
You should never communicate with another judge until after the race. It should be all
Okay.
independent.
Okay.
All right. Wayne's been patiently waiting for a question. Wayne?
Not actually a question. It related to the paddles issue. And Robert Cardenas also said this and confirmed what I was going to say, which is that Michael Roth down in North Carolina is apparently producing paddles at this point as well. And Robert says that he also has paddles for the time penalties for the pit lane or penalty zone.
Well, good.
Great. That's awesome. Somebody asked a question in chat. I'm not going to actually do it, but they asked me to put up my Star Wars race walking video.
Jeff, hold on 1 second before you do that. To answer the question about communicating, there is one person you can communicate with, and that's the chief judge. If without identifying the walker, you might say to the chief judge, there's somebody who's taking advantage of the rules on this part of the course. The chief judge might ask another judge to move over there just in case. I'll give you an example. I was judging the national 40K race. That's 25 miles in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. And the walkers, I was one of the judges. Maybe I was a chief, I forget. And the walkers were complaining about one of the walkers running between the judges. So I realized you're not supposed to be doing this. I hid behind a tree. And as she's jogging up a hill, I stepped out in front of her and showed her the red paddle. And she nearly fell over and said, "Oh, no." Well, she corrected. And I mean, I showed her my yellow paddle and I said, "You're not walking." And she straightened up, and she was better from then on in. But we're not supposed to talk to the other judges. So you act independently and make the calls on your own. Okay, Jeff, Star Wars video?
So someone asked, and I'm not going to show it but I made a Star Wars race walking parody. So especially if you have youth kids and you want to see something unique, just go to walkwars.net. And it's there. It's also on racewalk.com.
Come on, Jeff, put it on.
We're not going to lose 10 minutes. It also won't look as good. So,
okay.
All right. We had another comment in chat. I officiate Special Olympics. How lenient should we be those athletes, especially given their intellectual ability. I think that's a personal judgment call. I can tell you that when it's an elite competition, I'm definitely a stricter judge when it's a bunch of novices or little kids. I think Special Olympics, if you're putting me on the spot, I'd probably be a little more lenient unless somebody is like obviously beating people who are illegally race walking. Right. You got to just use some kind of judgment there, right? Like if everybody's legal and one kid's running in the front, I think you got to make the call. If everybody is a little soft, you're not going to disqualify the entire field. And if someone's in last and they're soft or a little bit off the ground, I'm probably going to have mercy because we're all humans when it comes down to it. So
No, I'll take the other side. In Junior Olympics, there's an association championship, a regional championship, and then there's the national championship. It's a real shame that a kid can advance from the association level to the regional level and then get advanced to the national meet because they ran. And they get to the national meet and the judges throw them out. And grandma and grandpa have traveled across the country to watch Johnny get disqualified. I think that whole situation needs to be taken care of at the association and the regional level. If the people are bad and they're not race walking, they need to know it from the beginning. That's what coaches are for. You'll have less of a problem if they get disqualified at the first round of the competition than later on. But then,
this was a question about the Special Olympics, not the Junior Olympics.
no, I think he said Junior Olympics. I wouldn't even judge the Special Olympics.
Okay, well, I don't. Can you not see the chat?
No, I don't see the chat.
Oh, I have the chat open. Sorry.
Okay, because the chats are not visible.
If you click chat, it is. Anyway, so
Where would I see that?
Actually, I think that might have been a private question. It's not in the general chat.
I see chat.
Oh, sorry, you're correct.
Okay.
Sorry.
It is
My
there, Special
apologies.
Olympics.
Yeah, so he did
How
say
lenient
Special
should you
Olympics.
be? I think very lenient. Because I don't think
Well, so who's JCT dad? Can you chime in so I've not ever gone to Special Olympics, so.
That's me. I'm another Long Islander, by the way.
All right, Nassau or Suffolk?
Suffolk.
Ah,
Yeah, and Suffolk County
Suffolk.
Olympics for a long, long time. The athletes mostly do not want special treatment.
okay. I bow to you because I've never been to the Special Olympics and I have no experience. So I think you take your lead.
But Special Olympics is not advancing to a national Special Olympics based on how they do there. And in many cases, I would treat Special Olympics like I would a power walking event. If the kids can't straighten, they can't straighten. If a kid outright runs after you have told them they're running, then you might want to disqualify them if that really matters. If they're scoring places in the Special Olympics, which I don't know if they do. I know they do in Paralympics, but that's a different story. Para athletics, but Special Olympics is more about participation. And kids are trying to walk, let them walk. So in Special Olympics, do they give out awards based on the finish, the place they come in?
I can't speak for the whole nation, but on Long Island, we did.
Okay, and you had a race walk in that competition?
Actually, I don't recall one.
No, I've never
But,
seen it.
I'm old and I forget stuff.
Yeah. Oh, me too.
I'm young and I forget stuff. Okay, well,
I
great.
actually wrote the software that scored our Suffolk County games until the state came along and made IBM do it.
Well, good for
Okay.
you. What language?
Oh, in English.
No, what programming language?
Oh, it was called Data Ease.
Okay, see, his memory's still good. We need to listen to him.
And
All
I
right.
wish it were still around. It's a great database.
I'm a computer science professor by day, so. All right, any other questions?
Yes, I'm Tanya Rice Turner. I have a question in regards to when you work a meet and you may have not enough officials to cover all of the zones. What would be the key zones that you would want to have covered based on that situation?
In a track race, the straightaways.
In a track race, like if you're doing a 1,500 meters or a 3,000 race walk, something along those
If
lines.
it's a 1,500, I'd like to have, and you're on a 400-meter track,
Correct,
like to have-
outdoors.
I like to have at least 2 judges on each straightaway.
Okay,
If you don't have enough judges, try to recruit somebody and have them pretend to be a judge. Have them not give calls, but just have them be out there with a paddle. The athletes might think that they're judges and they're not going to take advantage of them, but I don't think they will. And if you have less than 3 judges, it's going to be just difficult to disqualify anybody. And you really need to try to have 4 or 5 for a track race.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, I had a quick one. I don't know if it'll be quick to answer, but Gary, you kept mentioning that you would give a yellow and a red card at the same time. Did I hear that right?
You heard that right.
Okay, great. Can you go over the instances that you would do that? Because I'm just not following you wouldn't tell the athlete that they had a red card. You would give them
No.
the yellow and
But
then
I'd show them the yellow paddle.
Show them.
The situation I can
directly
think
give them
of,
the red.
we had a 5K race, a 5,000-meter race on Long Island in March for high school girls to qualify, to get qualifying times for Penn relays, which we'll do again the last Saturday in March. And a 9th grade girl, I would say precocious as far as race walking goes, was way off the ground for the first 100 meters. She passed 2 judges. She got 2 red cards for that 100 meters. I showed her a yellow paddle and I gave her a red card because she needed to know that she was in danger. And then the red cards got posted and she corrected and she finished the whole race. That having been said, in a shorter race, if somebody breaks out into a run at the beginning, I'm going to give them the red card, and I'll also show them a yellow paddle, just because they might have been overly enthusiastic. And if they straighten out, fine. Now, if 3 judges saw that, her running at the beginning, and they get red cards, well, they deserved it. But if it's only 1, because you don't have judges all there, that's why I usually like to have the chief judge and another judge covering the beginning of the race. And if you're 100 meters away and you see this person outright running, then do what you have to do to protect the race. Forget what we said about being in your viewing area, because if it looks like a duck, it is a duck. I guess that's the wrong expression, because people think race walkers look like ducks as they waddle by. And I shouldn't be saying that. That's horrible to talk about race walking that way. But if it will help the athlete to correct, that's why we're there. It's not really coaching, but I think for younger athletes, a yellow paddle is important. For older athletes, if it was a major championship, I wouldn't give them the yellow paddle. I just go right to the red and let the posting board take care of it, because they should know better. Now,
Again, we have a question, and I don't know if it depends on the jurisdiction of the event. What's the minimum number of judges for 400 meters? Like if you're on a track?
The minimum to have a race is 3. Now that rule was written when it took 3 to disqualify. If you have a penalty zone, you better have more than 3.
So you can't, obviously you can't have a penalty zone if you only have 3 judges.
Well, you could, but the person's no one's going to get
No
disqualified.
one's going to get disqualified, right? I don't think that would be ideal. Okay, any other questions? We've been running pretty long, so.
We're here.
I'm sorry, I have another question.
Sure.
Is it ever appropriate to give 2 yellow paddles to the same athlete?
If they're
Yes.
2 different violations, so you can give 1 for loss of contact, 1 for bent knee, but you cannot give a bent knee twice.
Okay,
That situation would really occur in a much longer race where athletes become fatigued and they change their technique of walking. You know, they go from race walking to pedestrian walking or hiking, and they're exhausted. And so you go, maybe you give them a yellow paddle at the beginning, you might give them for loss of contact, you might give the bent knee later in the race. But in a short race, no, I don't think it would ever happen.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
I just wanted to say this was great. This was wonderful. I think we should have more of these. And I think we should, be able to, publicize it far more. You guys were great. I mean, I've worked with both of you, so it's always great to see good people and people who love the sport and want to remind everyone that the race walk is so important. So thank you.
Appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
We've made this a huge part of our life for, the majority of our lives. So, did JTC Dad have a question there? Looked like you were raising your hand. No?
No.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, everybody. I'm going to take the
Gary,
recording of this.
say hi to Maria for me.
Oh, I will.
She's in Walk Wars. I am going to take the recording of this, put it online, and then I'll have Phyllis send it out. So if people want to, use it as a reference, and then I'll get you a link to all the other videos. So thanks for your time, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays. Have a safe